What's up, Packers fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Draft brought to you by the good people at Badger State Brewing in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Another day, another Texas Longhorn, and not only another Texas Longhorn, but another Texas Longhorn with an apostrophe in his first name. Very happy to be breaking down today Texas defensive lineman T'Vondre Sweat. T'Vondre Sweat, folks, is enormous. It is the number one thing that is noted on film. It is the number one thing when you just look at him. It's the number one thing when you see pictures of him. My man is listed at 6'4", 362 pounds. He is a prototype, one tackle one technique, or even, obviously a zero, a nose. He's just big. And I know that just being 6'4", 360 doesn't make you a dynamite football player. It doesn't make you an NFL prospect, but he moves extremely well for being the size that he is. Very excited to see what he does, if he runs in Indy, if he does agility drills in Indy, if he does vert, stuff like that. I mean, he has a chance for a truly special, spark, relative athletic score, whatever it is, just because, there's multipliers there. There's, for being 6'4", 360, his numbers are going to really be strong. I mean, anything, if he runs a 5-second or a 4.95 40 at 362 pounds, that's going to be an elite time, a truly, truly elite time, especially for the defensive tackle position. Just excited to see how he tests, because he looks like a freak when you watch him actually play football. And that's the most impressive thing to me is, he is not just, a 6'4", 360. You're just thinking, well, okay, he digs his back foot in the ground. The center and the guard can't move him, and that's great for the linebackers that play behind him, and it's great for Texas's defense overall. That's true. Okay, that happens, but it's not the whole thing. It's not everything that he does. He moves well. He can pursue down the line. There's a little bit of pass rush wiggle, and just a player that I love. And one that I think, and we'll get into it, of course, but one that I really think fits well with the Green Bay Packers. One thing I'll say, whatever you think of Pro Football Focus grades, he grades out extremely well. I mean, extremely, extremely well. At 6'4", 362, I believe he was the top-ranked defensive tackle in the Big 12. He might have even been the top-graded defensive tackle in college football. And, to do that, to win, play in, play out, play in, play out. And that's what PFF is. I mean, people can have disagreements and whatever. And I'm not even saying they're the gospel. What I am saying is that their grading system is play in, play out, every single play, winning, losing, or just kind of doing your job. And he grades out extremely well at 6'4", 360. The other thing that I want to say, and I will eventually stop saying 6'4", 360. The other thing that I want to stress, he was top 6 in the Big 12 among defensive linemen playing at 360 pounds, top 6 in total snaps. He had more snaps than Byron Murphy, who I love also. I mean, he's a very good player. I don't think he fits quite as well with Green Bay, but he had more snaps than Byron Murphy carrying 360 pounds, top 6 in the conference. Most guys that big, most nose tackles are coming off the field. This guy does not come off the field. Obviously he does, and defensive line rotations are just a part of football. But my man wants to stay in there, and he's effective. And as I said, if he was wearing down, the PFF grade would not be where it is, because they're grading the fourth quarter the same as they're grading the first quarter. And I'm gonna get beyond also, those kind of numbers, but that's what I see on film. Okay, I see a guy who is just an incredibly well-conditioned athlete for carrying that amount of weight, and plays extremely well. He's strong in run defense. What else would you expect from a guy that size? Okay, he's very difficult to displace. Centers and guards aren't moving him out of the way. I think he can play 1. I think he can play 3. I think he can, do some stuff at 0. He's going to be difficult to move, period. And I think that, and we'll get into it when, we do talk about fit, I think that could be really, really ideal for Green Bay. 31 quarterback pressures at his size. And here's another thing that really gets me about this kid. That's second in the Big 12 among interior defensive linemen. And this includes all sorts of 6'1", 6'2", 290-pound, penetrating 3 techniques, all the defensive linemen, not the edges, but the defensive linemen. And so for him, At 360, to have 31 quarterback pressures in a college season, I can't tell you how special that has a chance to be, because he is just so difficult to move in the run game that if he can even just be a little bit, just a little bit, you know, 25 pressures a season in the NFL with 4 sacks, 5 sacks. I mean, that's BJ Raji, right? I mean, that's anything that you could ever ask of a first round nose tackle. And I don't know how many first round nose tackles we're going to get, but I'll comp him to Jordan Davis, which is something we'll talk about that later. I mean, I don't know that you're going to get that much of a different career arc from T'Vondre Sweat. And Jordan Davis was thought to be, I believe, a top 14 or top 15 pick in his draft class. 6 batted balls. So if we're not getting to the quarterback, which we kind of are, we're using our enormous frame and our big long arms to swat balls. He is just a menace. And that was my last point. He's a menace to play against. I would absolutely despise game planning against T'Vondre Sweat. And it shows up over and over again on film, whether he's batting balls, whether he's creating quarterback pressure, or whether he's just not being moved in the run game, which is his thing. I just love him. I have very, very much enjoyed the 6 games of T'Vondre Sweat that I have had the opportunity to watch, and I very much like him as a player. Okay, cons. Is the weight an issue? Those super, super big guys, you never know. Okay, you never know. Didn't weigh in at the college all-star game. I think it was Senior Bowl. I'm almost certain it was Senior Bowl. Didn't weigh in. Maybe he's at 380 right now, 390. I don't know. It's honestly probably not even appropriate for me to speculate, but those super, super, super big guys, it's always a question. Now, if it's effective weight, maybe Green Bay wants him to play at 345 instead of 362. It's fine. All that's fine, but you pay attention to the super, super big guys. You really do. Sometimes they have short careers. And so that's something to just kind of sprinkle in there as far as his overall grade as a prospect. Can the pass rush translate to the NFL? I don't know. We'll see. I mentioned, the pressure numbers. We like that. We like that quite a bit. Overall, though, the just looking at a box score numbers, you're seeing 5 sacks in 5 years. He's no spring chicken. I believe he's probably a COVID kid, because he played 5 full years at Texas, and 17 and a half tackles for loss, 5 sacks. He's not getting upfield a ton, which is fine. It's not a huge deal, but 13 batted balls, man. 13 batted balls. I'm impressed. I'm impressed with what he does. And that said, is he worth a top 60 pick if he can't play on pass downs? Okay, I did the and I don't know what days these necessarily come out. We sort of had a schedule, but the grand, Andy puts them out, right? So like whenever it kind of fits in, and by the way, I'm totally cool with that. Andy puts them out, and that schedule is kind of that schedule. And so I'm not 100% sure what day you guys are getting this, but Jeff Hafley's the Packers' new D coordinator. Okay, everybody knows that. I wrote in the piece, there's about 1,500 words. Go check it out on PackerReport.com. Become a VIP, please. About the fact that it's a pass defense league. Okay, it is. I mean, everybody remembers when the Packers got run all over by the 49ers in the NFC Championship game and lost that game. And that sucked. That was not fun to watch. But you really think about the other times the Packers have been knocked out in the playoffs. It's Larry Fitzgerald in overtime. It's Tramon Williams in Seattle. It's Brock Purdy going 6 for 7 and Christian McCaffrey scoring a touchdown because Brock Purdy drove them down the field. It's Kevin King holding, Tom Brady getting a holding call to end that NFC Championship game. Okay, that's why Green Bay hasn't. It's my God in heaven, everything that Matt Ryan did to Ladarius Gunter. It is a pass defense league, especially when it comes down to January. And people think it's cold. Hey, most of it's played indoors, guys, or out in San Francisco, where the weather doesn't matter. So if he's not a pass defender, can you burn a top 60 pick on him? I don't know. We'll find out. If he can be what he can be against the run and be even just a league average pass defender, I would burn a top 60 pick on him. But again, if he doesn't affect the passing game, should you use a premium pick on him? I think that's at least worth a question. I think, when he's pass rushing, he does get caught up on interior offensive linemen who are technically sound, to use their hands well. It looks like he's getting held. He's kind of not. He's just like, he doesn't get upfield a ton. I mean, like I said, 17 and a half tackles for loss, 5 sacks. It's not a ton of up the field production. Now, it's not his job, but it's not what he does super well, and he's not a refined pass rusher. There are not a ton of counter moves, which maybe there's some upside there. Okay, maybe a good defensive line coach, like if they keep Coach Mont. I do like Coach Mont, what he's done this year with the positional changes and shifts with Colby Wooden, Carl Brooks. I think he's done a great job with Devontae White. Wish you'd get him to defend the run a little bit more, but I like Jerry Montgomery. People have kind of struggled sometimes with the output from the defensive line. I think he's done a good job. I like Coach Mont, and hopefully, he could do some stuff with Tavondre as far as some rip moves, some swim stuff, some hand fighting, and really kind of teach him the pass rush side of the game when he goes to the NFL, which is a pretty pass heavy. The Big 12 is pass heavy, but the NFL, in crunch time when you need it, Green Bay is going to use pick 41 or 57, 58, whatever it is, on Tavondre Sweat. Like I said, going to want 4 sacks, going to want 5 sacks, going to want him to at least be part of the conversation on passing downs. Okay, the Packers fit. And I'm going to get into this because I do believe that Tavondre is our first defensive lineman that we've discussed. I think I talked about it on the wide receiver side when I talked about the Melton Heath kind of line. This is the Colby Wooden line. Okay, the Colby Wooden Continental Divide, the Colby Wooden, whatever you want to call it. Okay, there's a line, right? Because Green Bay is not going to get rid of TJ Slayton. Green Bay is not going to get rid of Kenny Clark. Green Bay is not going to get rid of Carl Brooks. And I don't believe that Green Bay anytime soon is getting rid of Devontae White either. That's 4. Okay. Green Bay, I think, sort of kept Jonathan Ford around. I can't remember what they did. Like maybe they kept him out of camp with 6. I don't know. But normally a team like Green Bay is going to carry 5 defensive tackles, right? You go back and look at kind of the 53-man rosters that they've actually gone into week 1 with. It's usually 5 defensive tackles. And that may change, Hafley might want to do something a little bit different. With that said, Colby Wooden's a 4th-round pick, and he didn't stink, okay? Like, he did some cool stuff, including in the playoffs. And the point that I'm then trying to make is you've got 4 rock-solid dudes you're not doing anything with, okay? Anything. Like Wyatt, Clark, Slayton, Brooks, they're not doing anything. They're going to be on the team, folks, in 2024. They are. So you either have to be a little bit shorter at a different position and keep 6 defensive tackles, which is not going to be the end of the world, especially since with Hafley being a little bit more multiple, I think you could use Brooks and Wooden in different places. Like I think Brooks could probably play some end if you were going to do some 4-down stuff, and that'd be cool. But in general, if you have 5 defensive tackles, would you cut Colby Wooden to add Tavondre Sweat? That's the question. And that's a question I'm going to ask with a bunch of defensive tackles, which really is kind of why after round 3, maybe round 4, I don't even know why you'd add one, because he's going to get released. In my opinion, he's going to get released. You can build depth, you can try, but what are you burning draft picks on a guy that you are just trying to get to your practice squad anyway? In my opinion, draft picks are for guys you want to make the team. Okay. And so there's a point where you kind of have to ask yourself, would I release Colby Wooden for this player? And that's the Colby Wooden line. It's very similar to the Melton Heath line when we talked about wide receivers. It fits what they currently don't have on the roster. Okay, Kenny Clark was like 5th on the team or top 4 on the team in overall snaps. Huge problem. I would not do that to any defensive lineman. Your snap leaders, and I get there were injuries. Campbell got hurt. Quay missed a couple games, I think. The safeties were just in and out of the lineup constantly. But like your corners, your back 7 are the guys that don't rotate. Your edges rotate, but even they shouldn't need to rotate as often as your defensive line. Your defensive linemen should be at the bottom of your snap chart at the end of each game. Okay, they need to be fresh. Kenny Clark played way too many snaps. And why? Why does Kenny Clark play so many snaps? Because he's a dominant pass rusher, and he is at least a net neutral to slightly positive against the run, and has been dominant against the run in stretches of his career. Devontae Wyatt is just flat out not defending the run right now. Colby Wooden is 270. Ridiculous to ask him to defend the run in any meaningful way, playing the position that he would have to play in Joe Barry's defense. And Carl Brooks is a converted end, kind of a weird-bodied converted end. So if we're talking about just non-run defenders, you got Wyatt, Brooks, and Wooden. So the only 2 run defenders that you really have are Slayton and Clark. Clark's also your best interior defensive pass rusher. They got to get some time off Clark, and the more valuable time is to have him pass rush. So how do you get him off the field on rundowns? T'Vondre Sweat. That's how you get him off the field on rundowns. You can be one of your base 3. You can be starting 2 on early downs. You want maybe a 1-tech, 3-tech. Like you could play Kenny Clark at 3, which would be actually Kenny Clark would be a sweet 3-tech. I know he's big and he like was drafted as a nose. T'Vondre Sweat at the 1 with Kenny Clark at the 3, and then you rotate them out and you bring in Slayton at the 1, or probably start Slayton just because he's been in there longer. But your top 4 interior guys, man, Devontae Wyatt and T'Vondre Sweat coming in as a second group of defensive tackles. If your starters are Slayton and Clark, whew, that would be something, and then you got Carl Brooks just causing all sorts of havoc, lining up across the formation and spelling those guys. Carl Brooks probably can't spell you at the 1, but then you would have 3 guys that can spell you at nose, because Slayton can play nose, Sweat can play nose, and Kenny Clark can play nose. And that's why I think he just really fits kind of what they don't have. And there is a place for T'Vondre Sweat on this roster. It's a grade A fit to me. I mean, he is one guy that I would just add to this roster because of a number of the things that I said. Getting Kenny Clark off the field on rundowns, being the 3rd guy that can play nose, because really they didn't have a 3rd guy that could play nose last year because they didn't activate Jonathan Ford almost ever. I don't know if they did. So to me, just absolutely grade A. Would love to add T'Vondre Sweat to this roster. And that's what I'm looking for, by the way, guys. I love Byron Murphy. Aaron Nagler, I think, and I talked a little bit about Byron Murphy. Miss me with all of those guys. If you're 6'1", 295, Michael Hall, Ohio State, you're 6'1" or 6'2", 295, I'm sure you're a great player. I'm out. Okay. Talk to me about the McKinley kid from Texas A&M. Talk to me about Sweat. Talk to me about Mason Smith from LSU. I want run defenders. I want 320-pound plus guys. I don't need that with Colby Wooden, Devontae Wyatt, Kenny Clark, and Carl Brooks on this team. I don't need another sub rusher. I don't need another undersized defensive tackle unless he's Aaron freaking Donald. And I don't know that guy's in this class unless it's maybe Jerzon Newton from Illinois, who I love a lot and would be totally fine with the Packers taking, despite him not being enormous. Anyway, my grade, solid round 2 grade. Solid, rock solid round 2 grade. I think the Jordan Davis discussion is interesting, right? I was lower on Jordan Davis than most. I almost felt pressured. I think a lot of people had Jordan Davis as a really, really highly ranked player in that class. I think he ended up like 15th overall for me. And then people felt like he fell, which he basically fell to where I had him ranked. And that's not to pump myself up or beat my chest. I'm so smart. You could kind of see what this might end up being, which is he's got 30 quarterback pressures in 2 years, man. And he's grading out okay. And that's, of course, using PFF, but he's grading out okay against the run. Good run defender, but not like, you cannot run through here, right? He's not, prime BJ Raji or I can't remember who Castillo, maybe. The Chargers had an unbelievable nose tackle when Sean Merriman was there and LT was there. I can't remember his name, but God dang, he was good. Vince Wilfork, he's not, Jordan Davis is not Vince Wilfork against the run. He's just not. And so to me, where I probably now, of course, hindsight 2020, I probably should have had a round 2 on Jordan Davis, but everybody thought that was insane. That's what I have on T'Vondre Sweat. He's player 46 overall for me. Rock solid round 2 grade. I love T'Vondre Sweat.